Hi, I'm Alison Hitchcock. Thank you so much for joining us for this letter writing session for our charity From Me to You. From Me to You was started up by me and Brian Greenley. And Brian's not here today, but I am going to tell you about him a little bit later. But what From Me to You does is it tackles the isolation and loneliness of a cancer diagnosis by doing something just as simple as writing a letter. Before we start, I do want to say that whilst this workshop is designed to be light-hearted, we do know that cancer is a very sensitive subject. And so if you are in any way affected by cancer, there is a 24/7 helpline support number that you can call, which is run by Macmillan. So please do phone that. You don't have to have cancer to use it. So let me start off before we get into our letter writing by just telling you how our charity started. So the story starts back in 2009 when I was on a yoga holiday in India, and Brian Greenley was on the holiday as well. And we didn't really have much in common, so we didn't particularly bond on the holiday until we were in the last class, and we were both at the back of the class, mats next to each other in headstand. And at the same time, we both farted and we both heard each other and we crashed to our mats laughing. And we realised that actually there was a couple of things that we had in common. One was issues with Indian curries and the other was a shared sense of humour. And so we decided that when we got back to the UK, we would get together for a drink. But of course, life gets in the way, these things don't happen. And it was actually 6 months before we met up. And just 3 days before that, Brian had been diagnosed with bowel cancer. And he wasn't going to tell me because he didn't really know me that well. But of course, the only thing that was in his mind was that he had cancer. And so he blurted it out. And because I didn't know him very well, I didn't know what to say. So I made this really bizarre offer to write letters to him to cheer him up through his treatment. And he said, "Oh, you're a letter writer." And I said, "Oh, no, I've written a letter since I was a child." So he went home thinking, she won't write. She's weird. And I went home thinking, I won't write. I'm weird. But it really niggled me for the next couple of weeks. And all I kept thinking was, he's got cancer. All I have to do is write a letter. And so after a couple of weeks, I sat down on my sofa with a big glass of wine and wrote a letter. And I loved it. I was doing something creative. I was doing something good for somebody else. And also I was just giving myself a little bit of me time. And that was the first of over 100 letters that I wrote to Brian as his cancer went from stage 3 to stage 4. He had radiotherapy, chemotherapy, 4 lots of surgeries and a temporary colostomy bag. And as time went on, we became friends. Brian never wrote back. He had nothing to say. He had cancer. Why would he want to write? But we started to talk on the phone, and eventually I started to go and visit him at home. And then he began to share with me what it was like to have cancer and why my letters were really helping him. And what he said was that he was really surprised at how lonely and isolating cancer can be. He has a partner, family, friends, but he was no longer at work. He wasn't going to the pub anymore. He wasn't socializing. And so many people who didn't know what to say just didn't say anything. And he said that my letters would come through his door, land on his doormat, and he would save them for a time of the day when he was perhaps feeling particularly low, or perhaps when he went to his chemo session and he had to sit there all day on his own. And he would then open my letters, and it was like he had a friend chatting to him on his shoulder. So in 2013, a couple of things happened. By that time, Brian and I were best friends, and he came to my hen weekend. But also Brian got his first all clear, which was amazing from stage 4 bowel cancer. He went back to work, our lives went back to normal, but we had this feeling that we should do something with our story of letters and friendship and cancer. And that's why in 2017, we set up our charity From Me to You. And as you probably know, From Me to You asks people from all over the world to write letters. We process them, we filter them, and then we distribute them to local hospitals and cancer centres and to individuals at home. Every year, we deliver 10,000 letters. And we also say to people, if there is someone in your life who is currently living with cancer, maybe a colleague at work, maybe a loved one, don't turn your back on them because you don't know what to say. Give them the gift of a letter. But writing a letter to someone with cancer, and especially perhaps to someone you don't know, is daunting. So here are our tips for how you go about it. So first of all, choose who you're going to write to. Is it going to be for someone you know, or is it for donate a letter? And then choose a theme. Get a piece of scrap paper, choose your theme. So for today's session, we're going to think about seasons. So let's say autumn. And just spend 30 seconds writing down words, phrases that are to do with your theme. So it might be Halloween, it might be bonfire, it might be toffee apples, but just write down loads and loads of words because they're going to help you create the content for your letter. When you've written down those words, then use them. Think about an anecdote or a story that you want to share. Something to do with your theme. It might not be about you, but it's something that you've seen or heard. Maybe it's a childhood memory of what you did on bonfire night. Maybe it's what your children are doing for Halloween. Maybe it's just the thought of walking through crunching leaves. Just choose your anecdote and just keep that in your head. Then choose your piece of stationery. It might be a beautiful card. It might be some note paper. It might be just A4 paper. Anything is okay because it's really the words that matter. But you're going to have an opening line. And the opening lines are the difficult bits. So I am now going to share with you some sample opening lines. And when you've seen these, you might just want to stop this video and choose your opening line and write it down. Let me see if I can find them. This is always the tricky bit. Here we go. So when you have chosen your opening line and you've adapted it or whatever you want to do, now you're going to get on to the main meat of your letter. So, and just remember that with an opening line, hardly anybody ever remembers an opening line. It's what's inside your letter that really matters. So first of all, write just a paragraph, just setting the scene. So take your theme and just write some things to take the reader into your world. So it might be, if you're writing about the seasons, it might be why you love this season or you hate it. It might be about things that trigger memories about autumn. It might be a list of all the things that autumn makes you think of. It might be about your favourite foods for autumn. When you've done that, your next paragraph is going to be your anecdote, your story. And make sure that when you're writing your story, even if it's not about you, share something of yourself in it. So what did you think about the story? How did you come to know about the story? Is it something that's been passed down, or was it something that you observed? Was it something that you overheard? Is it about somebody in your family? So give something of yourself and spend about 20 minutes writing that paragraph. Then for your last paragraph, you can double the impact of your letter by simply asking the reader to go into their imagination or memories of the thing that you've been writing about. So if you've been writing about your Halloween experiences, then ask the reader to go into their Halloween memories, because then you've taken the reader out of their own world whilst they're reading your letter. You've then doubled the time that they're spending time away from the reality of their day. And that is a real gift in itself. And then you're going to want a closing line. And again, closing lines, really, really simple. Again, nobody remembers the closing line, but we've got some examples here to share with you. Let me again share my screen. And again, just feel free to stop the video and just copy down whichever closing line appeals to you. And just sign off with your first name or your initials if you're writing for Donate a Letter. Then all you have to do is put your letter in an envelope and send it to us at our PO box address, or give it to the person in your organisation who is collecting the letters for you. In your pack, you've got our address, but you've also got our website details, and on there is lots of information about sample letters, how to sign up for a newsletter so you keep up to date with all of our news and information. And we'd love you to write again. People write as often as they like, some every week, some just once a year. And you can keep on sending your letters to our inbox, sorry, to our PO box, and pop somewhere in the letter, just pop your full name and your email address, because we always like to thank you for the letters and let you know that we've received them. If you have any questions or queries, just jump onto our website and contact us. We can answer anything that you want to know. And we also, within your package, is a link to frequently asked questions. But thank you so much for spending your time today supporting us and supporting someone who is probably sitting at hospital now on their own, feeling quite lonely and isolated because of their cancer diagnosis. Know that your letter will brighten their day.